Hello and welcome to the Crunchy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya, also known as It's Crunchy Lena on Instagram. Crunchy Conversations is a podcast dedicated to creating open and honest dialogue between myself and fellow naturally minded or crunchy parents, people, and practitioners. I put out episodes of Crunchy Conversations weekly, so don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening app. You can follow the podcast on Facebook or Instagram just by searching up Crunchy Conversations. And while you're at our Facebook page, don't forget to join our Facebook group, the Crunchy Conversations Community, to connect with other like-minded people. And if you want to further support the show, you can sign up for monthly donations at anchor.fm/crunchyconversations or make a one-time donation at paypal.me/crunchyconversations. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Crunchy Conversations. Today on the podcast, I'm going to be talking to my cousin Cristina Ortiz about healing our family ancestral line through our own self-care and living a holistic lifestyle. My cousin is such a wise person, and this conversation is really great. So I'm so excited for you to listen to it. And now here's my conversation with Cristina. Today's guest is actually my cousin, Cristina. So, Cristina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Cristina. I'm Lena's older cousin, and I'm a certified yoga teacher, and I'm also an artist. I'm a musician. I am a dog mom, and I am a licensed New York State childhood teacher. I work with kids, and I teach English, I teach art, I teach yoga. Basically just like give me someone and I'll teach them. So that's really my role here in the world. I'm a teacher, I'm an artist, all that good stuff.
Yeah, my cousin does wear a lot of hats, and she's incredibly talented and just super informed and educated on everything, natural health and diet, and just honestly somebody who, when I went vegan all those years ago, my cousin was my inspiration for that.
Oh.
Yeah. We sound so similar. So if it's hard to tell the difference between us,
yeah,
that's why we all have the same voice.
We do. We inherited the same voice.
We did. It's interesting.
For some reason.
Because we're all the same person. Anyway. Today, I wanted to have my cousin on here to talk about healing our family karmic debt through self-care and our personal health. I have had some health issues throughout my life, and it is definitely a genetic thing. All of our family has some pretty serious health issues. I don't know what you're comfortable sharing, T, but I call my cousin Cristina T. It's very weird for me to call her Cristina. So if you hear me call her T, that's why. I don't know what you're comfortable sharing, but if you want to share a little bit of your health history and how you got into, the more holistic way of life.
Yeah. So I got into the holistic way of life at a really early age. Some people don't start doing yoga until they have the autonomy to go after it themselves. But I was one of the fortunate ones who my mother brought me. Actually, Lena, I don't even know if you know this story, but my mother brought me to her yoga class when I was about 7.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
Maybe 6, very early, maybe even before you were born or right around when you were a baby. I started going to yoga because my mother and I have a very vivid memory of the teacher, and she's a well-known teacher in the area, and to this day she's still teaching yoga, and she's 100 years old now. So back in the day, my mom brought me to her because I, as a child, had a lot of issues with mobility. I had a lot of issues with my joints, chronic pain, basically a childhood autoimmune disease that caused inflammation throughout my body and this inability to move freely and comfortably. So I became acquainted with living with pain from a very young age. And so my mother at that time in the 90s decided it would be a good idea to see if yoga could help me. I have this vivid memory being a small kid going into this yoga studio. And the only thing that I can really remember is the teacher happened to have a glass Coke bottle on hand. She put it on the ground, probably on a yoga mat or something, and she had me roll my foot back and forth to activate the muscles on the bottom of my feet. And it's interesting because to this day, now as a yoga teacher, when people come to me in my class and they mention that they have any kind of pain somewhere in their body and their joints, I automatically direct their attention to their feet because that's what holds up our entire body and it's our connection to the earth. So I just thought that that was a really interesting way for me to have like a first memory of being in a yoga studio, was this kind of like healing of my feet, like a self-healing of my feet from this woman who's like a pillar in the yoga community here. And like all thanks to my mom is what brought me in there. So that's really how I first got exposed to yoga. And it just kind of kept circling back around into my life. It was always my mother bringing me to acupuncture or chiropractics or whatever. And we had this acupuncture doctor who would give us herbs as well, Chinese herbs. And this was all through high school. So I was exposed just because I was ill. Like, who knows if I wasn't ill, if I would ever have learned all this stuff. Like even out throughout high school, I was doing acupuncture and receiving herbal consultations from a doctor. He was actually an MD who was also an acupuncturist and herbal healer. And again, it was my mother always bringing me because she saw me ill and suffering with this autoimmune disorder and trying to find other alternatives to supplement my like mainstream, like medical regimens and this and that. So
yeah, I remember from growing up, actually, when I was dealing with a lot of my stuff, your mom would constantly send things to my mom and try to get her to bring me. She actually got my mom to bring me to a homeopath at certain points. And that's how I was really like beginning to be exposed. I do remember like growing up, going to Whole Foods with your mom specifically and like always having whole wheat bread at your house. And like it seems to just be a very, taught thing from your mom. That's such like a blessing, 'cause so many parents, especially like when we were growing up, so many parents didn't know that there were any alternatives. It's really incredible to me that you were brought up essentially by a crunchy parent.
Yeah, I was. And like even when we were babies, my mom made all of our food. She didn't give us anything store bought. She would process it at home. She would cook the vegetables and the fruits and she would put it in the blender and, all of that stuff. So she was kind of doing it in her own way. I mean, this was like in the 90s. And when I was growing up, when you and me and Lena were growing up, it's just like interesting in retrospect. Like I had that, like I feel really privileged. Now we find ourselves in this like wave, this like renaissance of all these kind of more traditional ways of raising ourselves and healing ourselves with the earth. I mean, I don't know if that's just because we're at the age where we're aware of it now and we can see it and notice it, or if it's because it's just flourishing now. But either way, like she was doing it at her time as a young mother. For me, I'm really grateful for that. So thanks for asking the question.
Thank you for answering. And I loved that piece about the yoga class. I did not know that before. Your mom was very influential with me becoming a mom. She actually was the one who pushed me into going with midwives versus an OB-GYN. So I was deeply, deeply appreciative of that. For like you on a daily basis, how, and this is going to sound like a weird question because it's a very broad question, but how do you take care of yourself? Like what are some things that you do distinctly to take care of yourself where you also keep in mind the things our ancestors had went through? Like, for example, for me, I make a lot of moon water, which is, full moon water. And I specifically make a bottle like for our grandmother, who I'm actually named after. So I feel very connected to her. So I do things like that. And in my car, I keep her rosary. So like every once in a while, I'll put a little frankincense oil on there, just, little gift, a little offering to her and specific things like that. So what do you say you would do to address that?
On a daily basis. So there's three things I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about like how my ancestors are present with me on a daily basis. I also want to say something about the moon and the water. Lastly, I want to say something about my connection to her and to my ancestors, like in the past, like growing up, like as a child. Which one should I start with?
Start wherever you feels natural.
I'm going to go with the moon just to dovetail off of what you said. So here in this cup right here.
Yeah, is a yellowy liquid. That sounds so bad.
It's all good. It is actually, it's a drink. It's an elixir that I made with moon water.
Ooh.
On the last full moon, it was the first full moon of 2020.
And the full moon in Cancer, which is
Cancer.
The mother sign.
And isn't that your mom's sign?
I believe my mother's a Cancer rising. She's a Capricorn, but I believe she's a Cancer rising because Dexter's a Cancer rising, and rising signs tend to be inherited. Like I'm a Scorpio rising and Scott's a Scorpio rising, which is like the coolest thing to me.
And Grandpa's a Scorpio.
Yeah. And Grandma was a Scorpio too.
She was a Scorpio too.
Mm-hmm.
They were both Scorpios. And my dad is a Scorpio.
I know. That's the cool. And your mom, I believe I did her chart and she has a Scorpio moon, if I remember correctly.
Let's just go with it for, consistency's sake.
Yeah,
but
it works.
On that full moon, I brought out a pitcher of filtered water. I put on my grandmother's pearls. I took her cup and I took some sage and I took some tobacco and I went out into the backyard. And that particular moon was really radiant, if you recall.
Yes.
Y'all. Like it
so
was
pretty.
It was really a clear night. Well, there were some clouds, but there were times where it was very clear and very bright. And it was warm for this time of year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the next day we were sitting on your deck and
we
spent the whole morning outside.
And I offered you moon water. You're like, I got my own, no worries.
And now, a quick break from our show to talk about this week's featured Earthly product. Earthly is a small, family-owned company dedicated to bringing you products that are made with ingredients that come straight from the earth. This week, I want to talk to you about Earthly's chocolate lotion bar. After having Scott, the skin on my hands and feet changed completely. They are so dry constantly, and it's itchy, and it hurts, and it's so annoying. I felt like I was searching for a lotion forever, but I finally found Earthly's chocolate lotion bar, and let me tell you, it's the best lotion I have ever used in my life. Not only does it smell delicious, like it smells so good that I want to eat it, but it's super hydrating and nourishing for my skin as well, and it's made out of only 4 ingredients. If you want to try Earthly's chocolate lotion bar, click the link in the show notes page. And now back to the show.
So I had used that moon water to brew some sencha tea, which I then put into my second fermentation of this lime kombucha that I had created. So like on that particular moon, I just felt really called to like get some of her stuff, like her pearls and her cup, and go out there and just meditate like on her image. Mm-hmm. When I connect with her, and again, like I connect with not just that grandmother, but like my other grandmothers as well. And even my grandfather who's deceased, and even my grandfather who's living, just like these are my ancestors living and past. When she comes to mind and I start trying to connect with her memory and things, it just feels like so much pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. I remember.
I get that too from her, like a lot.
Because she was very ill. She was very ill, and there were, I don't want to like get too much into the family history, but it just feels like a lot of pain and suffering. And that's expected. This woman was an immigrant in the late 50s, turning into the 60s, coming to a country that you don't speak the language during that time, like trying to raise a family over here. I mean, it was really hard for her, I think. And she had her own issues going on. And I just remember like as a child feeling so sad for my mom. Like she would come tuck me in at night and I would just feel so sad that like she didn't have a mom, and this is like me being like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old,
which is like a really deep thought for that age.
Yeah. And I was really like emotionally affected by it. Like I remember crying like so many nights, and my mom, I don't know if she like ever heard me or anything. I was quiet. I just like remember feeling very sad like at bedtime because I had my mom there and she didn't have her mom. And like, especially now, like I'm thinking I'm 29. She died when my mom, I believe, was younger than me.
Yeah.
If I have the math right. And so then it's like, I think to myself, okay, well, here I am with my mother. I'm at this age. My mother is at her age, and she doesn't necessarily like have something to look back on and say, what did my mother do when I was this age? Because she wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So there's something is like missing there. I think about that from time to time. And when I do my meditative prayers, I do a lot of meditation, and I've been exposed to like chanting for the ancestors and stuff through some Chinese practices that I've done practicing with my teacher. And I just kind of try to send like positive envisionings like around her. Like I just try to transform that sad feeling that I feel. And it might feel uncomfortable, but just trying to like feel like I can lift up that mood. And I think that it's important to do that because I'm feeling that for her. So she left missed. And a lot of stuff, I guess, wasn't resolved. When we talk about healing the family line, it's like, well, what energy am I still holding like in this place for that person who I never even met before?
That's a big thing of it too, because obviously I never met her either. And I still feel like extremely connected with her. And I can very much relate to your feeling how you felt sad for your mom, whereas like, you know, you felt sad that she didn't have her mom anymore. I feel sad that, you know, my mom had to be a mom without her mom. I couldn't imagine that. You know, one of my favorite memories from giving birth to Scott was looking up right after he came out and seeing my mom right there and like be so proud of that moment. And I just can't imagine when Dexter falls. Obviously, like I call Jack, but then my second call is to my mom. It's very natural. And I hear all the time on like stories of women like talking. They're always like, yeah, I did whatever a responsible adult would do. And I called my mom. I can't really imagine going through all of that without your mom.
I mean, I think it's natural for grandmothers to help their daughters raise their grandchildren. I mean, again, I'm not a mother at this time, but that's kind of like how it's seen. Like that's how it's been forever. Just raise your kid on your own. Like,
no, it takes
your
a village.
Families, exactly.
But then in the turn, it's like, you know, your mom and your parents care for you when you're a baby. So then when they get older, it's your responsibility to care for them and nourish them the way that they nourished you when you were growing up. And now a quick break from our show to talk about Little Natural. Little Natural is an online boutique that offers the most adorable baby clothes and accessories. When I was pregnant with Scott, I stumbled upon Little Natural and instantly fell in love with their adorable baby moccasins. And now that he's crawling, we've been using the moccasins for him, and they are the cutest things on the planet. One of the things that really made me fall in love with Little Natural was all the free products that they offer. All you have to do is pay shipping. If you want to try out Little Natural's moccasins or any of their other adorable products, click the link in the show notes page. Or you can visit littlenatural.com and use referral code LINAE10 at checkout. Again, that's Lina, LINAE 10 at checkout. And now back to our show. Do you want to go into you started with the moon thing, so you want to go into what you do more on a daily aspect with self-care,
Self-care. Yeah, with my self-care?
Because I personally believe that if we treat ourselves right, just by doing that alone is contributing to healing the whole family line.
That's 100% accurate, Lena. I agree 100%. We could certainly take the initiative to help someone, whether they literally be there or their memory, and actively send prayers and light and whatever it is, healing. But I really feel strongly that the most important type of healing you can do is just literally on yourself, like whatever it takes to keep yourself in peace is going to be the most effective form of healing.
Yes.
For yourself, for the people around you, for the world. We're here to bring more peace to this place. How do you do that? You need to just channel it in through yourself with your own actions and mindset. And if you do that, it's just the way that the universe works. Like you're just naturally going to have a more positive impact on other people and healing whatever it is that you inherited. So like, I don't know, like past traumas that you may have inherited through they've proved now that like DNA holds memories.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I mean, like, if you think about it, our grandmother, the mutual one that we're like speaking about, she held both of our moms in her womb. And while both of our mothers were forming in her womb, our eggs that eventually became you and I were also forming in there. You know, so it's not too far off to say that we would store some of like her trauma and her emotions in our DNA.
Yeah, like on a physical level.
Yeah.
Like an actual physical level, like any of those tensions. I have like the same tension on my forehead that my mother has.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
here, I'll tell you a crazy story.
Go ahead.
So Dexter, he fell recently and he had to go get stitches. And isn't that crazy? Boys, right?
Yeah.
We never had to deal with this growing up because we were all girls. I had Dr. Sanders do some craniosacral therapy on his head because I wanted to make sure there was no tension or like pressure building in there. And as he's working on him, I feel like the muscle fascia in my head move. And then he pulled on Dexter's ears. And as he pulled down on Dexter's ears, I had to like open my jaw and release air because there was like a tension that built up and needed to just from my son doing it. It's absolutely insane to think about.
That's really interesting.
Isn't that cool?
That's really interesting. I really resonate with like the idea that things other than likeness, like physical appearance, genes, yes, all that stuff gets passed in. We know that already, but it really resonates with me, this idea that like you're already within that DNA, like forming, like you've already lived your entire mother's life with her because you were in there, and she lived her entire mother's life already. And I was thinking about this earlier today as I was mentally preparing to talk with you. And I was thinking to myself actually like about like the culture of fermentation. Because there's something in there, and we know this because we're Italian, that when you create vinegar, you have something in the bottom of the vinegar called the mother. And my mom got hers from our aunt, Aunt Irma, and I brew kombucha. There's like a mother culture in there that say you have your original vessel and you have this culture in it, and it kind of gives birth to this environment where more can grow, and then it goes off and does its thing, but you save some of it and you create the next brew. So you've used that mother, and then from there you create the next one. So it's like part of that is continuing to live on in every single one of these brews that you create, and you're using a little bit of the previous one on the next one over and over and over again. And I feel like that is exactly how humans work too. It's like you've had this woman's essence, and then she creates this next person, and then she creates the next one, but like you still have the original essence of the ancestor is like moving through the generations of people, which is really similar to like how that original mother culture moves through the generations of whatever product you're fermenting, whether it's like vinegar or kombucha or something.
I love that. That's like really great. A very like simplistic visual way to imagine, the cycle of life and the cycle of, womanhood in general, because at the end of the day, women are the birthers and the life bringers. So that was cool.
It just kind of like came to me earlier today. I don't know why.
Because you're one of those people, you know what I'm saying? Like, these like brilliant ideas like come, and that's what they are. They're just like brilliant ideas that very nicely explain the world. I feel like I can say that because I'm like similar, whereas like I'll get like very fixated on something, you know how I am.
But that's just what we're here. I mean, like I'm just trying to really understand like the world and this whole like human existence. It's like every once in a while I'll like come out of my role of being Cristina, like enter title here, and it's just like taking us this step back and just observing. Like
and regrounding.
Yeah. And just like saying like, what are these creatures that we are exactly? It's like we think we know what we're doing, but we're just kind of like wrapped up in these routines that we do every day. I mean, sometimes I feel like that at least. And like taking a step back and trying to figure out like, what is this all about exactly? That's just where it comes from. I don't know. I'm like open to trying to understand that. So I just think about these things.
Yeah. No, and I think if you're open to these kinds of ideas and you really meditate about, things like that, these ideas are going to come from you. And I don't know if you ever thought this, but sometimes I'll have an idea where it did not come from me. It was placed there. Somebody else had that idea and just happened to give it to me kind of thing. I don't know if it comes from God sometimes, or maybe sometimes it comes from, our ancestors, but there definitely are things that they'll just like come to you and they'll hit you and you'll be like, whoa, that's crazy. I resonate with that.
They say that none of our ideas are really our own. This idea that your consciousness exists outside of your actual body vessel and that we're just downloading or channeling through. It's like, what am I consciously opening myself to? And then these channels of conscious energy and ideas can just kind of flow through your brain and then come out of you as some form of creative expression.
Yeah, I agree with
I don't know enough about metaphysics to say anything more intelligent about that.
I don't think you need to know about metaphysics. That's like, I don't know, as much as that is sciencey, that's also very spiritual and on the plane that we tend chosen to reside in. But this has been really wonderful and insightful. And even just speaking to you for this past half hour, I feel like I've gotten to know you and your perspective a little bit more, which is honestly always a treat for me because I really, I really do love my cousins. Yes, we grew up very close.
We really did.
And like sisters.
Really, you were really like my little sister when we were growing up.
We were always there.
I think our grandmother hopefully she would be proud of us.
I think that she would, honestly. Like a lot of the things that I do with my kids particularly is to bring them back to nature.
Even our grandmothers, and we knew our great grandmother. Like my great grandmother, she helped raise me basically. So that was kind of like the stand-in for my mother, her grandmother, Nona. I really think that we're very lucky because those roots of living with the land, they're not as far away as we'd like to think. I mean, there's really like 1-2 generations removed of like basically completely living off of this mountainside. And, but like time is weird because our lifestyle is drastically different just within a couple of generations. I mean, I guess that's the way of the technological age that it's just like advances so quickly. But if we take another step back, and like you said, you're trying to raise your kids to be more and more connected to nature every single day. And I mean, like I try to do that for myself every single day too, as self-care. But the truth of the matter is like, it wasn't that long ago. We can reclaim all of this stuff. Like it's there, it's in us, it's all around us. It's just, it often feels like we're going against the status quo, like the mainstream. And I think it's really important to like connect to other people who are on the same wavelength as you, because it's like you're stronger in numbers. You feel like you're not doing it alone.
Yeah. And that's exactly like what I'm trying to do with this podcast is create more conversation and more places and another platform for people to talk about our kind of lifestyle and really just bring awareness to it that there is another way to live and you can live connect to nature and we can in a modern society live a holistic lifestyle and use herbs and homeopathic remedies and essential oils, and we have the availability to do so. So this is like
sharing the idea that it's not black and white and it's not going to happen overnight. This is a lifelong journey. We inherited this society that we were born into. So it's okay if you're here, like this is where you are, like you're just coming to this awareness and you maybe have an end goal of I'm completely vegan and I'm homesteading and I'm creating all of my own flax fiber and making my own textiles and like making my own honey with the bee. I mean, like you can have this ideal vision, but what's my reality is like I live in like a suburban metropolitan area. What are my actual resources at hand? What is my actual community here in this place? It's like, what do I actually have control over? And saying, okay, I have an idea of what my ideal lifestyle would be, but what can I do today? What can I do tomorrow to just inch my way closer? And that's where doing things like just practicing yoga and praying and making kombucha and making everything that you can when you can. It's like you can't do everything. And I think that that's just like something that I have to just keep reminding myself of, because it's just you can only just do what you can do. And it's a transitionary period like in society, like in this world. So I'm just feel like I have the responsibility to like hold that space and do whatever I can do to just kind of, again, like upload it back into that collective consciousness so that it's there and it's available. And I'm like affecting what normal is just by living this kind of lifestyle that we're kind of talking about.
I think that's an incredibly important thing to say, because I know a lot with the natural parenting community, a lot of people put so much pressure on themselves to be perfect, where in reality, it's every little step counts. You know, if you're just taking out toxic cleaners from your home, that counts. You know, if you're just going dairy free because that's what works for your kid's gut, that's fantastic. It's like every little step that you can do counts towards living a more holistic lifestyle.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. Anyway, is there somewhere that the listeners can find you if they want to connect?
Sun and Moon Yoga, WP.com.
Yeah. And that's my cousin's business site. And do you want to share about Create Kuan Yin? Or
yes, I started a nonprofit project called Create Kuan Yin. It's a startup charitable organization that really works to educate the community and teach practices such as yoga, mindfulness, Reiki, meditation to the community.
It's a really cool resource. What is it called?
Kuan Yin. Okay. Kuan Yin, like as in the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin.
Cool. And I'll leave like all your links on the show notes page for people. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, T. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your wisdom with everybody else. And this was really enjoyable. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, Lena, thank you so much for thinking of having me on. I was so excited to talk with you today. It's always really awesome to have these kind of conversations. So thanks again for doing this, and just for holding this space for other women and like having future conversations, because I think it's a really awesome initiative that you're taking on. So I just wish you the best of luck with your new project.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Crunchy Conversations. You can follow the podcast on Instagram or Facebook just by searching up Crunchy Conversations. And while you're at our Facebook page, don't forget to join our Facebook group, the Crunchy Conversation Community. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at It's Crunchy Lena. I also have a blog called itscrunchlena.com. And on my blog, you can also sign up for weekly newsletters for everything It's Crunchy Lena and Crunchy Conversations. Don't forget to check out the show notes page to find this week's featured earthly product, as well as the links to my cousin Cristina's website and her nonprofit. If you want to further support the show, you can make monthly donations at anchor.fm/crunchyconversations, or you can make a one-time donation at paypal.me/crunchyconversations. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.